Right now, it is time for the Media Beat with David Tereshchuk. David joins us on a Friday morning. He is a PBS television correspondent reporting on ethics and belief, has his own terrific website called themediabeat.us, and he is so dedicated that he is actually right now in the Rockies, and he managed to find a lean-to to get up early this morning and do his Media Beat. Good morning, David.
Well, a good early morning to you, too. Yes, I'm in Colorado. I'm not on a lean-to. I'm in actually a very comfortable place. But I have to admit, this is one of the earliest times that I've gotten up to do the Media Beat spot with you. Although, I remember other times when I've been in much more challenging circumstances. I remember coming into you live from Namibia. That was well into the day. Of course, they were ahead of they're ahead of you there, not behind you, in terms of time. But yes, it's good to be talking to you. And one of those weeks, yet again, when it's quiet and uneventful in the media world.
Yeah, it's amazing. And what broke this week is a classic example of, this is where I don't, and you can answer this, how the rest of the world looks at this. We have a president that uses his airtime, whatever it is, and forgets that he's president, and he uses language, and he does things on tweets like in April of this year. In April, basically saying, "Take back Michigan, take back Michigan."
I think the phrase at the time that was most compelling, sticks out from the tweets for me from that period in the spring, was all in caps. Liberate Wisconsin.
Yeah, and then he went on to liberate Michigan, and the president's words have meanings because we already have enough crazy people out there. We already have enough people that are in these sects and in these cults and in these militias that it gives them a sense of, okay, you know what? We're doing the right thing. And this is one of the most horrendous stories I can really think about that, thank God, was stopped, where they were going to shoot police officers, kidnap police officers, kidnap the governor, possibly kill the governor, all right before the election. I mean, this is staggering stuff.
13 men charged altogether, and the combination of state charges and federal charges. Yes, including in one case, in the case of 7 of the men, plotting to kidnap Governor Gretchen Whitmer of Wisconsin, and a woman who has been clearly targeted by this right-wing militia movement, and in their targeting, they quote, of course, again and again, and take encouragement from the president and his tweets just a few hours before these charges were unveiled. Yesterday, Trump was calling the governor, who previously referred to, of course, as that woman from Wisconsin. In this case, was calling her the lock-up queen, of course, talking about her efforts to combat COVID in the statewide in Michigan, statewide rather than her state, but inevitably recalling and echoing that signature chant of the 2016 election, lock her up. So, seven men were planning to, at the least, it seems, kidnap and illegally detain a duly elected governor of a U.S. state. And it is suggested in the criminal complaint, were prepared to kill her, too. These are shocking days, and even more shocking to think that activity like this has been inspired and arguably encouraged by the man at the very pinnacle top of our governance system.
When I was in high school, I had a lot of fun. I was kind of a wise guy. Most teachers liked me, except for 2. Most administrators liked me because they tolerated me. But one of the first things I was told by Mr. Alto, who was a terrific vice principal, was, Marshall, and this is no lie because this has been around for words matter. Words matter in every instance of the case, but words matter because what you might say as a funny joke or something, somebody else will take seriously, and so I always kept that in my mind as I went into broadcasting. And yeah, there's a couple of times where I've come to that line and towed it and stuff like that, like most people do when they're young in their careers. But when you're president of the United States, or you're a congressperson or a senator or vice president, words go out to the entire population, and they really, really, really do matter.
Yeah, the important point for all public communicators, of course, is to, whenever possible, err on the side of caution. Now, that is not very appealing for raucous comedians sometimes, but even they obey certain sort of rules of decent discourse. But in this case, we have a chief executive of the entire nation who is not characterized by caution in any sense, and is reckless. And the word that I know I keep finding myself using, because it seems the most appropriate, and as we talk on the radio every week, is totally feckless. It's as if he has no care for any kind of sense of responsibility, whatever.
And I have been watching with interest his not live, but when I Google his statements, and he was on Fox yesterday, I do believe it, and he was talking about how he's healthy, he's ready to hold rallies. But in this whole line on Fox, and anybody can Google this and listen to it, he is coughing. He's coughing throughout the whole thing, and that's a big indicator that, he's not ready to go out there yet. And
yeah, it's hard to make a diagnosis on the basis of one of Trump's videos or audio contributions to Fox News, or even what he posted on Twitter yesterday in video form. I watched 4+ minutes of it, and indeed, the steroids are certainly having their effect. There's a sort of rapidity to his speech, which is even more sort of speedy and unthought out and just cannonball-like. But yes, there is very evident trouble in breathing, and we're all going to say this, commenting on such things. I am not a doctor, but there are some things that are pretty clear. I'm troubled. I'm really troubled by looking at this man spitting forth, and I use that word carefully too, the kind of recklessness that he's capable of, and is repeating live in every forum that he prefers, at least. He's declining to do another debate remotely and virtually, electronically, saying it's a waste of his time, reneging, of course, on a previously agreed appointment on October the 15th, and declining to do the kind of presidential debate that has been part of our history since, on a regular basis since 1992, when, presidents can define almost their performance in the before the public. President H.W. Bush, for instance, in that 1992 debate with Bill Clinton, was caught on camera looking at his watch. Clearly a man in great discomfort and wondering when this agony of his was going to end. It was a town hall form of debate, which has been so much part of the scene since that 92 experiment, and it's one that Trump can't face. Of course, he doesn't want to handle questions from the public. The last thing he wants to do. So yeah, we've got a man using the media that appeal to him, and avoiding those in which he's fearful of. And of course, every politician's allowed to do that. But of course, there was an agreement at one point between the two campaigns, and whether or not we see Trump being questioned in public again in a formal arena before we all cast our votes is now very, very uncertain.
Well, what's interesting in his last comment on it, and like I said, years ago, I was a member of a debate club, and he talked about how he wasn't going to do a virtual debate, and he wound up by actually saying, and they can cut you off, they can turn your mic off. Well,
yes.
For
what reason can the broadcasters cut your mic off? Of course, because you're not obeying the rules that you agreed to. Which brings me to the vice presidential debate of this week. Not the complete disaster that the first presidential debate was, with Trump going off the rails and off the rules entirely, but certainly the vice president, Pence, being allowed to get away with much rule breaking there too. And in fact, I normally on this slot, has become very familiar now. We bring out a beautiful fanfare for good pieces of communication and excellent pieces of journalism each week, and I'm afraid I'm not going to do that this week because I don't see one. But what I am concerned about this week is an appalling lack of good broadcast journalism on display. In that vice presidential debate, Susan Page of the USA Today newspaper, I'm afraid, let us all down in the journalism industry, particularly. I guess, and I don't want to be unkind, but I'm afraid she's an excellent. I know her to be an excellent print journalist. But there are some times when you need to be practiced in the arts of broadcast journalism too, whether it's radio or television. When you're in a position a very exposed position like this, sharing a live event with two hefty personalities, and one of them certainly with a distinct propensity not to keep to the broadcasting agreement that was reached beforehand. Susan was persistent in saying that she was there to enforce the rules, and I'm afraid enforcing the rules was not what she did. And I'm not going to say that Kamala Harris didn't do some evading too, like any politician being quizzed. She was capable of being agile and avoiding embarrassing or difficult points if she felt she needed to. But I'm afraid Pence was given way too much leeway to just ignore the question, certainly ignore the time rules, and we had this horrible spectacle of a man not shouting down, but just droning down a woman who was trying to just do the decent thing and say, "Thank you, Mr. Vice President. Thank you, Mr. Vice President," was the lamentable plea all the time. She didn't even get to the point of saying, "Mr. Vice President, your time's up. Your time's up. Your time's up." That is perfectly. That sort of thing is perfectly in order for a broadcaster to say. Stop a person talking who has overrun his or her time. And of course, cutting off the mic, with a literal ending of the person's ability to continue communicating is an option that should be open to her, and she should have used.
All right, we'll leave our campaign politics, but I want to get your opinion. Of course, here in the United States, people are talking about a second wave. Folks, we never really got out of the first wave here. We're just in an elongated first wave where, once again, it's growing once again. But
ebbing and flowing, I think, is the best way of considering it, I believe.
I like what.
But yes, it's looking serious again, worldwide too, of course, not just in America. But we are far from a good example. We're still, I'm afraid, the world leader.
Yeah, what's amazing, and somebody put it in a very good way, you have to look at COVID-19, a health official, as if you're a cove off the ocean, and a wave comes in from the ocean, and you know what? No matter how big that cove is, sooner or later, that wave is going to slosh around several times, and it's not just one wave, and it's over. But Europe at least now they're seeing it pick back up. but they initially most places in Europe got control of it, and now once again they're having a problem with the second wave. This is something that we look at, David, and I don't see, people are weary of this across the world, not only in this country, but we are nowhere near the end of having to deal with this.
No, of course not. And consistency of precaution is what's called for, and every responsible leader in whatever whatever element of governance they're concerned with, and what level, whether it's local community or city or state, or I don't think I'll stop when I get to the federal level, because again it's been infected by fecklessness. But every responsible level of government down from the presidency has got to ensure that the citizenry continue to be as cautious as has been the case in those states and jurisdictions where the infection rate has successfully been brought down. It's still in danger of going up again, as you say. New York is even having New York, which did so well after a terrible spring, horrific time in New York City, especially in March of this year. But after a summer of something of a lull, we're now getting spikes in several zip code areas. It's very, very much in the form of clusters. But again, the way to deal with it is to go back to basics and ensure that the citizenry does take all the precautions that are urged upon them. And inevitably, we get rebellious people and lots of different excuses, if you like, for being wanton and irresponsible, including even religious belief and a conviction that somehow or other you're a special case, and that applies to many people for different reasons. Some less understandable even than the recklessness of some religious communities. But we can't get away from the fact that our tools, they're limited, but they're very simple and they're very effective, and we need to keep up the practice of using those tools, and it can't be said often enough that we know how to contain that. We don't know how to cure it yet, but we're working on that. But we know how to contain this disease, and we just have to, resist the temptation to feel wearied by this whole process and give up on the daily essentials that are needed to keep us well and safe.
And looking back to yesterday, I want to get your opinion on this with all the news that broke about what went on in Michigan and other things. The president did not once again come on, tweet, or talk about or condemn what happened in Michigan and the charges that were filed. And also, while this was going on, the President of the United States once again called for the indictment of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. These are things that movie script writers write up, David, and you just don't ever believe if they're made into a movie that it's true. But you know what? Truth is stranger than fiction.
Yeah, absolutely, and not to be flippant about it, but yeah, we're beyond the bounds of the craziest fiction anymore. This is a light-hearted version of the same point, but the star of that series, Veep, tweeted yesterday that she just only wishes that someone on the Veep team had thought about using the black fly that nestled so conspicuously in the shock white hair of the vice president in the debate. I wish that had been in her Hollywood TV series script. And yeah, everything that's going now is beyond the imaginations of many television and movie making, script writing individuals who spend their lifetime thinking up the most absurd and sometimes the most credulity stretching plot lines. We're beyond all of those now. That's true. when something very pointed sticks through. I mean, another very important military man, a four-star general, is Chuck Boyd from the Air Force, the latest top military leader, retired, of course, to come out and condemn Trump as a threat to democracy. This is a very high-stakes election. It keeps being pointed out, and I don't think we should ever lose sight of that fact. No matter how much we find ourselves reeling in disbelief, this is really going on, and also at times we're tempted just to reel in ridiculous laughter. But no, it's deadly serious as well.
You know, that was going to be my next comment to you. I listened to his interview when he's a Republican, a staunch Republican, a retired general, and what he's...
Oh, and 7 years a prisoner of war, by the way. So automatically, for our president, he counts as a loser.
But what he said was so true. The person said to them, well, what brought you to... When did you come to this decision, and what brought you to this decision? And he said, very simple, one thing. Our president of the United States is questioning our way of electing people to the Congress, to the Senate, to be president. He is calling into question the actual authenticity of voting, which is the cornerstone of our democracy, and that caused me to have to make this decision. And it's a very simple statement, but a very powerful statement that he made. You cannot, especially as president of the United States, maybe as from some militia group or whatever, but as president of the United States, to place doubt on the way Americans have been electing presidents forever, and knowing that after so many different investigations, literally over the past 25 years, there have been about 200 cases of individual voter fraud that have been found. That's what brought him to that decision, and that's what makes this election so important.
Right. Yeah, the very fact that the man at the top is undermining confidence in the very system by which leaders are elected, the voting system of the nation as a whole, is an indicator yet again that President Trump is falling into the category that we're all too familiar with around the world, the autocrat who decries the very system by which his country's, and it's usually a he, his country's electoral system works. Autocrats around the world want to say before an election that they're likely to lose, that the fix is in and it's all rigged, and you know, all the things that Trump himself is now saying.
And really what it comes down to, and I'm going to simplify things because I can do this because I'm not really a journalist, but it all comes down to this, the old joke: heads, I win, tails, you lose. Really?
Yeah, absolutely. But you know, the thing is, we've all got that basic citizen responsibility. We just have to go out and vote, and I think we can and we should trust the system.
David, it's always great to speak to you. Are you going to go back to bed now, or are you going to go for a walk in the wilds?
That's between me and my own conscience, I think. Okay. I'll let you know next week how I'm faring.
All right. Have fun out there in Colorado, and we'll speak to you next week.
Indeed.
David Tereshchuk with the Media Beat here on Robin Hood Radio. You can always find it if you miss it live at robinhoodradio.com on demand. The Media Beat. It's rebroadcast also on the weekends, and I do believe Mondays following our 12 noon news here on Robin Hood Radio.